The whisper slid into Nar Shaddaa's oppressive atmosphere like a blade into a corpse. From orbit, the smuggler's moon was a festering jewel, a chaotic sprawl of endless cityscape, its neon arteries pulsing with vice and desperation. Zara watched it grow in the viewport, her knuckles white on the armrests. The last time she was here, she'd crushed a crime lord with the Force and put a target on their backs the size of a star destroyer. Now she was returning as the hunter, not the prey. At least that was the plan. Kael input the final approach vector, his face a mask of imperial efficiency. They wore their ISB uniforms, crisp gray, sharply tailored, the code cylinders and rank plaques feeling like shackles. Beneath the uniforms, against their skin, their lightsabers rested in hidden quick-draw holsters. The Whisper, repainted with false transponder codes and imperial markings, now looked like any other unremarkable logistics shuttle. A ghost in plain sight. Their landing pad was in a relatively clean sector, a euphemism for where the imperial presence was strong enough to keep the outright anarchy at bay. A squad of stormtroopers in pristine white armor stood at attention as the ramp lowered. A human ISB captain, a man with a face like a clenched fist and the name Varco on his chest plate, greeted them with a salute that was all sharp angles and suspicion. "Analyst Leston Wren? Your reputation precedes you." His voice was a gravelly baritone. The missing team was led by senior analyst Jax Torvin. Good man. Their last transmission originated from the Undercity Warrens, Sector Gamma 7th A known HUD-affiliated black market hub. They were investigating Kyber crystal smuggling. Their final report mentioned a Jedi artifact of significant power before comms went dead 6 standard hours ago. Survivors? Kael asked, his tone flat professional. Uncertain. Local scanners are useless down there. Too much synth pollution and illicit shielding. You're to locate them, secure any intelligence, and recover the artifact. A platoon of stormtroopers from the local garrison is at your disposal. Zara kept her expression neutral, but her mind raced. Jax Torvin. She knew him. They'd trained together in decryption protocols. He'd been decent. For an Imperial. Understood, Captain, Zara said, her voice betraying nothing. We'll proceed immediately. The descent into the Undercity was a journey into the planet's diseased bowels. They took a militarized airspeeder, escorted by 2 squads of stormtroopers in a heavier transport. The upper city's garish neon gave way to a permanent grimy twilight. Buildings were stacked upon buildings, a precarious hive of rusted metal and decaying permacrete. The air grew thick with the stench of industrial waste, ozone, and the unmistakable tang of rotting garbage and unwashed bodies. Flickering glow strips cast long, dancing shadows where figures, human and alien, melted in and out of doorways, watching the Imperial procession with hooded, resentful eyes. Sector Gamma 7 was a particular pit. The buildings here were ancient, built into the very bedrock of the moon, their foundations weeping black sludge. The target was a nondescript warehouse with a faded sign reading Kessel's Finest Spice, wholesale. A front, obviously. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the drip of water and the distant, thudding bass from a cantina blocks away. Scanners are dead, sir, a stormtrooper sergeant reported, his helmet tilting as he looked at his wrist-mounted sensor. Total interference. Fan out. Secure the perimeter, Kael ordered, his hand resting casually on the butt of his E-11 blaster rifle. The stormtroopers moved with practiced precision, covering angles. Zara approached the main door, a rusted slab of metal. It was slightly ajar. A dark, dried brown stain splattered the frame at waist height. Blood. She glanced at Kael. He gave a tight nod. She pushed the door open, her blaster raised. The interior was a cavernous space, lit only by emergency glow rods casting a sickly green light. Crates were stacked to the ceiling. And in the center of the floor, Criff, Kael breathed. 3 ISB agents in torn gray uniforms were tied back to back to back in the middle of the open space. They were alive, but barely. Beaten, bruised, one with a vicious burn across his face. In the poor light, Zara recognized Jax Torvin, his usually sharp features swollen and bloody. Around them, littering the floor like discarded toys, were the bodies of maybe a dozen Nar Shaddaa thugs, a mix of Weequays, Nikto, and humans in ragged armor. They'd put up a fight. Jax's head lolled up as they entered. His one good eye focused, confusion then desperate hope flooding his features. Leston Wren is is that you? Zara and Kael moved in, the stormtroopers securing the doorway. It's us, Jax, Zara said, kneeling beside him. Report. What happened? A younger agent, a woman with a shattered arm, sobbed. They took it, the artifact. It was a holocron. Jedi. Glowed when Torvin touched it. Then the gangs, they came out of the walls. Jax coughed, a wet, painful sound. We secured it. Hutt cartel hit us just after we called it in. Overwhelmed us. Took the holocron. They left us here as bait. Or to send a message. He looked at Zara, his gaze sharpening through the pain. You have to get it back. The data inside lists of children, Zara. Children. The Emperor, he can't get them. Zara's blood went cold. Kira's orders echoed in her head. Eliminate any witnesses. Jax was a witness. He'd seen the holocron. He knew what it contained. Before she could process it, the world exploded. Whomp. Whomp. Whomp! Heavy blaster cannon fire tore through the thin walls of the warehouse, stitching a line of molten holes across the crates. 2 stormtroopers by the door were cut in half, their white armor offering no protection against the heavy caliber bolts. The sergeant yelled, "Contact! Multiple hostiles, all sides!" From the shadows between the towering stacks of crates, from rusted catwalks above, from hidden doors in the floor, figures erupted. This wasn't a disorganized gang. This was a military-grade ambush. At least 30 of them, wearing the distinctive, mismatched armor of the Kessel's finest enforcers, the very gang whose front this was. They were armed with heavy repeating blasters, ion disruptors, and vibro axes. Take cover! Kael roared, shoving Zara behind a stack of Duraplast containers. Blaster fire turned the air into a lethal rainbow. The remaining stormtroopers returned fire, their disciplined shots punching through the thinner armor of the attackers. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. What followed was a symphony of meticulously choreographed violence. Zara moved like a phantom. Her ISB training and Silas's dark side tutelage merged into a deadly dance. She didn't just shoot, she predicted. A Weequay charged from behind a crate, vibroaxe raised. She didn't turn. She dropped to a knee, fired her E11 backwards under her arm, and the bolt took him in the throat. She rolled, came up firing twice, dropping a Nikto with a heavy rifle who was lining up a shot on Kael. Kael was a fortress. He anchored a position behind a heavy machinery console, his blaster rifle firing in controlled 3-round bursts. Each burst found a target, a knee, a weapon hand, a visor. He wasn't just killing, he was surgically dismantling the enemy's assault. When 3 enforcers tried to flank him, he didn't retreat. He charged. He barreled into the first, using the man as a shield against the second's blaster fire, then snapped the third's neck with a vicious twist before putting 2 bolts into the first's chest at point-blank range. But the enforcers kept coming. A massive Gamorrean, roaring, barreled towards the bound ISB agents, a rotary blaster cannon spewing death. Zara saw Jax's eyes widen in terror. No, the word wasn't a thought. It was an instinct buried under 3 years of running, a year of Imperial conditioning, and months of dark side training. It was the ghost of the Jedi she was supposed to be. Her hand shot out. Not with the crushing, furious telekinesis she'd used on Vosk or the Ninth Sister. This was a push, pure and focused. The force erupted from her in a visible, concussive wave of purple-tinged energy. It slammed into the Gamorrean, not to crush him, but to lift him off his feet and hurl him backwards 20 meters into a support column. The impact with a sickening crunch of breaking bone and buckling metal. The rotary cannon clattered to the ground. Silence for half a heartbeat. Then the stormtroopers and enforcers stared, not at the dead Gamorrean, but at her. At her outstretched hand. At the ripple in the air that was already fading. Jedi! An enforcer screamed, his voice cracking with superstitious terror. The firefight intensified, but the focus shifted. They were now the priority target. Kael cursed, a raw, violent sound. The plan was in ashes. He took command. Sergeant, suppressing fire on the left flank. Leston with me, we punch through to the rear exit. They fought as a unit, a single organism of death. Kael's blaster and Zara's force-enhanced reflexes carved a path through the enforcers. She used the force not with wild abandon, but with chilling precision, deflecting blaster bolts with invisible shields, yielding weapons from hands, creating momentary vacuums to stifle flame projectors. They reached a relatively clear spot near the back wall, the sounds of battle still raging around the central area where the stormtroopers were making their last stand and the bound agents huddled. Kael checked his power pack. "We need to fall back." "Call for extraction." Zara nodded, breathing hard. Then she looked back towards the center. Jax Torvin was looking right at her, his one good eye wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. He had seen her use the Force. He knew. Kira's order was absolute. Eliminate any witnesses. Kael followed her gaze. His face, spattered with someone else's blood, hardened. He understood, too. Without a word, he ejected his spent power pack and slammed a fresh one home with a sharp click. They moved back towards the center, not as rescuers, but as executioners. The remaining enforcers were in disarray, falling back under the stormtroopers' renewed fire. In moments, the warehouse was quiet, save for the moans of the wounded and the crackle of fires. 4 stormtroopers remained, plus the 3 bound ISB agents. Jax and his 2 comrades looked at Zara and Kael with desperate relief. "Thank the Empire," the female agent with the shattered arm wept. "I thought we were dead." Kael walked up to the lead stormtrooper sergeant. "Status?" "Enemies neutralized, sir." "Area secure." "Good," Kael said, his voice devoid of emotion. Then, in one smooth motion, he raised his E11, pressed the barrel to the sergeant's temple, and pulled the trigger. PFF'd. The suppressed shot was a soft cough. The sergeant crumpled, a neat hole in his helmet. The other 3 stormtroopers froze, confused for a fatal second. Kael and Zara moved in unison. 2 precise headshots from Kael. 1 from Zara. 3 bodies joined their sergeant on the grimy floor. Silence, thicker and heavier than any blaster fire, descended. Jax Torvin stared, his mouth agape. What? Leston Wren, what are you doing?" Zara turned her blaster rifle towards the 3 bound agents. Her hands, steady as Durasteel through the entire fight, began to tremble. The barrel wavered. She saw not Imperial analysts, but people she knew. Jax, who'd helped her with a tricky code just last month. The woman, Lyra, who'd shared calf with her and laughed about a stubborn superior. Her finger rested on the trigger. The cool metal against her skin felt like the edge of a bottomless pit. She saw the villagers on Sarish, the terror in their eyes, the feel of the DC-15S bucking in her hands, the smell of blaster-scorched flesh, the betrayal. A single, hot tear traced a path through the grime and blood on her cheek. "Zara," Jax whispered, his voice breaking. "What's wrong? You're pointing your blaster at friendlies." She was frozen. A statue of conflict, carved from grief and guilt. The bloodlust that had carried her through the fight was gone, replaced by a cold, nauseating horror. She was back on that dusty plain, her master's twisted voice in her ear, the blaster heavy in her hands. Kael watched her. He saw the tear. He saw the tremor. He saw the past drowning her in the present. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. His face was a grim slab of stone. He raised his own blaster. PFF'd. PFFT. PFFT. 3 shots, point blank between the eyes. Jax's head snapped back, a look of profound betrayal forever etched on his features. Lyra and the other agent jerked with the impacts and went still. Zara didn't flinch. She didn't move. Her blaster was still aimed at the space where Jax's head had been, now a ruined mess. Her breathing was shallow, rapid. Kael walked over to her. Gently, he pried the E11 from her locked fingers. It clattered to the floor. He took her by the shoulders and guided her, stiff and unresponsive, to a overturned crate. He sat her down, then sat beside her, the warehouse around them a charnel house of their making. He took one of her cold, blood-smeared hands in both of his. "It's all right," he said, his voice low, a stark contrast to the violence of moments before. "I know what you're seeing. I know where you are. It's that day again. The day we met." Zara stared straight ahead, unseeing. The tears fell silently now. "Imperial reinforcements will be here in a few hours to extract us," Kael continued, his thumb stroking her hand. "We'll tell them our colleagues were killed by the enforcers. We finished the last of them. It's clean." He paused, choosing his words. "But while we wait, let's remember. Let's remember how we got here. How we met. Maybe it'll help. Maybe it'll, I don't know, ground you." He took a deep breath, his eyes distant, seeing another time, another battlefield. It was a month before everything ended. Before Order 66, the Battle of Sarish. Flashback. 1 month before Order 66, the Battle of Sarish. The LA-8I gunship bucked like a bantha in a stampede. Zara Kess, at 16, clung to a handhold, her knuckles white beneath the blue skin of her fingers. Around her, the clone troopers of the 222th Gladiator Battalion, their Phase 2 armor painted with bold turquoise stripes, checked and rechecked their DC-15S blaster rifles. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, sweat, and fear. Her master, Jedi General Lyra Vex, stood at the front of the bay, her long blonde hair flowed freely. She wore clone armor pauldrons, vambraces, and gauntlets over her brown Jedi robes, the turquoise stripe of her battalion mirrored on them. Her blue eyes scanned the hellscape outside the open doors. Sarish was burning. Separatist droid armies swarmed the plains below, and the sky was a latticework of laser fire. "Steady, Zara," Lyra said, her voice calm despite the chaos. "We drop, we secure the landing zone, we link up with the 212th. Simple." A concussive blast rocked the gunship. A scream from the cockpit. "We're hit! Turbo laser! Port side engine is gone! We're going down!" "Brace!" Lyra yelled. The world spun. Zara's stomach lurched into her throat. Crunching metal, shattering transparasteel, the shrieks of tearing alloys. The gunship wasn't flying, it was falling. It slammed into the ground with a force that threw Zara against her restraints, the wind knocked out of her. Smoke. Fire. Alarms blaring. The groans of wounded clones. "Out! Everybody out!" Lyra commanded, her lightsaber, a brilliant blue, already ignited, deflecting incoming blaster fire from advancing B-2 super battle droids. Zara stumbled out, her own amethyst blade springing to life with its unique snap hiss. The world was chaos. The plains of Sarish were a muddy, cratered hell. In the distance, a Venator-class Star Destroyer, the Horizon, hung in the smoky sky, its shields flickering under a relentless barrage from a separatist blockade. "There!" a clone sergeant, Fixer, yelled, pointing. "The Horizon's still holding. Her hangar's our best bet." They fought their way towards the distant destroyer, a ragged knot of blue blades and white armor amidst a sea of metallic enemies. Droid poppers and clone blaster fire filled the air. Zara fought with a desperate grace, her Ataru style a blur of purple light as she severed droid limbs and deflected bolts back at their source. Her master was a rock, a whirlwind of blue destruction, covering their retreat. A Let gunship from the Horizon dropped down to extract them. They made it. The Horizon's main hangar bay was a scene of organized pandemonium. CR-20 troop carriers were disgorging reinforcements. ARC-170 fighters screamed out on sorties, and damage control teams fought fires from near misses. And there, in the midst of it, directing traffic with a calm authority, was Kael Tehran. He was 18, dressed in the same utilitarian black Jedi tunics as Zara, but with gray and blue accents. No clone armor. He moved with an efficient, grounded poise, his blue lightsaber hanging unignited at his hip. His eyes, a sharp gray, scanned the incoming troops, assessing. Zara's group staggered in, smoke-stained and bloodied. Her master immediately went to report to the Venator's commanding officer. Zara's eyes locked with Kael's across the bustling hangar. She walked over, her clone troopers following like weary banthas. Up close, she saw the stress lines around his eyes, the tight set of his jaw. But there was a steadiness to him. "Commander Zara Kess, 222th, she said, her voice raspy from smoke. She gestured to her black robes and the turquoise-armored clones. "I see you're not keen on following standard uniform protocols either." A ghost of a smile touched Kael's lips. "Jedi Padawan Kael Tehran. And no, I never saw the point in standard white or brown. It shows dirt too easily. Your master is General Vex? I've heard of her." "Tough." "She is," Zara said, looking around. "What's the situation? We got chewed up out there." Before Kael could answer, the deck shuddered violently beneath their feet. A massive explosion bloomed against the Horizon's starboard side. Alarms that were a background whine became ear-splitting shrieks. "Bridge to all hands," a voice boomed over the comm. "We have taken a direct hit to main power, droid borders in the ventral corridors, all non-essential personnel to escape pods." Kael's face paled, That's my master's voice. Come on. They sprinted through the shuddering corridors, passing clones running in the opposite direction, heading for defense points. The Venator groaned in agony around them, secondary explosions rattling its frame. They reached the command bridge just as another impact shook the ship. The bridge was a scene of controlled bedlam. Clone officers shouted over comms, trying to reroute power, coordinate the failing defense. In the center stood Jedi Master Valen Kor, Kael's master. A human man in his 40s with a shaved head and intense green eyes. He wore simple brown robes, now stained with soot. He was shouting orders, his voice the only calm thing in the room. Seal the blast doors to sectors 4 through 7. Divert all remaining power to forward shields. Where in the 7 hells is our starfighter support? Master! Kael yelled, skidding to a halt. Master Kor turned, his eyes flicking from Kael to Zara and her troops. Kael. Good. And you must be General Vex's Padawan. Your master went back out to the village you and your master were at a couple of rotations ago. The one where you and your master's forces helped the locals with relief and aid. And I heard you even made some friends and inspired some of them. That's shown great strength in your character, Zara. Master Kor praised Zara, but the gunship was shot down. We received a garbled transmission. She's alive, but her position is overrun. She's attempting to reroute her remaining forces to link up with the 212th, but General Kenobi's position is 2 rotations away by ground. Zara's heart clenched. We have to get to her! The hangar doors are jammed, a clone lieutenant reported, his voice strained. The mechanism is fused from the last hit. No ships can launch. Master Kor's gaze swept the tactical display, his mind racing. There's a civilian ship. A Corellian freighter. We seized it this morning, suspected separatist spy. It's in the main hangar. Its deflector shields are operational. If we could get to it, we could use it to ram the jammed doors open. Another violent tremor rocked the bridge. Sir, another clone yelled. Reports of boarders on Deck 9. They've breached the inner hull. Sound intruder alert, Master Kor commanded. Then he looked at Kael and Zara, his expression grim. This ship is lost. We abandon. You two get to that freighter. Use it to get to General Vex. It's her only chance. We're not leaving you, Master, Kael protested. Before Kor could reply, the main bridge elevator doors, shrouded in smoke from a sparking console, hissed open. A figure emerged from the haze. 7 feet tall. A skeletal, metallic frame. 4 arms, each ending in a mechanical hand. A cloak billowing from hunched shoulders. And the face, a burnished metal mask with glowing yellow eyes and a respirator that issued a rhythmic, dreadful hiss crack. General Grievous. Jedi. The cyborg's voice grated, a sound of grinding metal and hatred. He ignited 4 lightsabers, 2 blue, 2 green, that cast a deadly kaleidoscope across the bridge. Panic. Clone guards opened fire. Grievous became a spinning dervish of death. His blades moved so fast they were a solid wall of light. Blaster bolts were deflected back, cutting down the clones who fired them. He leapt, clearing 10 meters in a bound, and landed amidst the command crew. Master Kor didn't hesitate. His own green blade flashed to life. Go! He roared at Kael and Zara before charging to meet the separatist general. What followed was a brutal, short ballet of death. Kor was a master of Form 5 gemso, meeting power with power. Their blades clashed in a shower of sparks, the impacts ringing like hammer on anvil. Grievous was faster, a machine of pure offense, his 4 arms a whirlwind of strikes. Kor held, parrying, deflecting, but he was being driven back, step by step. Kael stood frozen, his hand on his lightsaber hilt, face etched with horror and fury. Zara watched too, but her mind was racing. The elevator behind them was still open, its call button glowing. Kael, the elevator! She yelled. Grievous, with a contemptuous swipe, cut down 2 more clones trying to flank him. He locked blades with Kor, forcing the Jedi Master to his knees, their sabers sizzling inches from Kor's face. You are brave, Jedi, Grievous hissed. But I have killed 100 of your kind. With a sudden, vicious twist, he disengaged one of his sabers and brought it around in a blinding arc. No! Kael screamed. The green blade of Master Kor's lightsaber deactivated. His head, separated from his body, tumbled to the deck with a sickening thud. The body remained kneeling for a second before collapsing. Grievous, with a kick of his powerful leg, sent the head flying across the bridge. It struck Kael square in the chest, knocking him backwards onto the deck, the lifeless eyes of his master staring up at him. Rage, pure and black, consumed Kael. A scream tore from his throat, raw and animalistic. He scrambled to his feet, his blue lightsaber igniting with a furious roar. "You twisted, vile creature!" He charged, a picture of Jedi wrath. It was a suicide run. Zara was already in the elevator. As Kael passed the threshold, she acted. Not with thought, but with instinct. Her hand shot out. The force wrapped around Kael like a giant invisible hand and yanked him backwards into the elevator with her. Simultaneously, she used her other hand to slam the button. The doors began to close. Grievous, turning from his grisly trophy, saw them. With a snarl, he lunged, a clawed foot stopping the closing doors for a crucial second. Kael, sprawled on the elevator floor, seethed. "Why did you stop me?" "He sacrificed himself so you could fight another day," Zara shot back, kicking at Grievous's foot. "Don't waste it. Besides, us Jedi aren't supposed to let anger get the best of you. It's not the Jedi way." "Screw the Jedi way. He killed my master." "I've used the dark side and the light in harmony since I was a kid," Zara yelled, finally wrenching Grievous's foot free and hitting the door close button again. "That's why I have an amethyst crystal. If you want to tap the darkness later, fine, I'll show you balance. But right now, I need you to get it together if we're getting off this criffing ship." The doors slid shut. For a second, there was only the hum of the descending elevator and Kael's ragged breathing. He was shaking, tears of fury and grief streaming down his face. The cold, detached Padawan was gone, replaced by a grieving, furious young man. Zara understood. The rule against attachment was a joke in times like these. Her own master was out there, possibly dying. Without thinking, acting on a pure empathy that would have made her old instructors frown, she put a hand on his shoulder. "I get it, Kael. It's okay. You can be vulnerable around me. Other Jedi might not understand, but I do. I don't know if my master's alive either. We have to make it to that hangar." Kael looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. He saw the fear beneath her bravado, the shared loss. He swallowed hard, the rage subsiding into a cold, hard knot. He gave a single sharp nod. Then the ceiling of the elevator exploded inwards. A metallic, three-fingered hand punched through the durasteel like it was flimsy. It grabbed Kael by the back of his tunic and smashed him upwards into the roof of the car. His head snapped back with a terrible crack, and he went limp, hanging from Grievous's grip. Zara's world narrowed to a point of violet fury. Her amethyst blade snap-hissed to life. She didn't think. She leapt a Puritaru vertical jump and brought her saber around in a two-handed cleave. The purple plasma sheared through the mechanical wrist holding Kael. Grievous roared from the shaft above, a sound of pure metallic rage. The severed hand, sparks spraying from its stump, dropped Kael. Zara caught him awkwardly, lowering him to the floor as another fist punched through the ceiling, grasping for her face. She jerked back, but the knuckles caught her across the jaw. The impact was like being hit by a speeder. Stars exploded behind her eyes. She stumbled, her lightsaber clattering from her numb fingers. Sprawled on the floor, she saw it, a dead clone trooper's DC-15S blaster rifle lying nearby. She scrambled for it, her jaw screaming in pain. As Grievous tore the ceiling open wider, preparing to drop into the elevator car, Zara brought the rifle up. She didn't just fire. She fused the force with her action. She pushed, not objects, but the air itself, creating a momentary, localized vacuum tunnel leading straight up to the hole. Then she emptied the rifle's entire charge pack on full auto into that tunnel. The blaster bolts, unimpeded by air resistance, shot upwards with terrifying velocity and accuracy. They peppered Grievous's exposed chest plate in the tight shaft. Sparks, molten metal, and chunks of circuitry flew. A pained electronic screech echoed down. The grasping hands withdrew. The elevator chose that moment to shudder to a halt at its destination deck. The doors slid open to a scene of chaos. 2 clone troopers were pinned behind a bulkhead, trading fire with a squad of B-2 super battle droids advancing down the corridor. Zara, half dragging, half carrying the unconscious Kael, stumbled out. "Troopers, on me!" The clones saw her, a Jedi Padawan dragging another, and didn't hesitate. They laid down covering fire and rushed to help her haul Kael down the corridor. "The hangar," Zara gasped. We need to get to the main hangar. They fought a running battle through the dying ship. Grievous was gone, for now, likely licking his wounds. But droids were everywhere. They reached the main hangar to find it a maelstrom. Clone pilots were fighting a desperate rearguard action to hold the landing zone as the last evacuees boarded the few remaining functional ships. Zara spotted her own 222th troopers, holding a perimeter around the LAATEI she'd arrived in. "Sir," her Sergeant Fixer yelled over the din. "You're alive!" "Barely. We need that seized freighter. Where is it?" Fixer pointed to a battered, wedge-shaped Corellian YT-2000, parked haphazardly near the jammed, partially open main hangar doors. Debris from the ceiling collapses littered the area around it. They fought their way over. Zara shoved Kael into the arms of two clones. "Get him to the medbay. Stabilize him." "Yes, Commander." Zara and Fixer sprinted up the freighter's ramp. The interior was a mess of ripped-out smuggling panels and hastily installed separatist comms gear. They scrambled into the cockpit. Zara slid into the pilot's seat, her fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. "Power's at 50%, shields are nominal, engines are green but shaky," Fixer reported from the co-pilot station. "It'll have to do." "Fire it up!" The ship rumbled to life. Zara lifted it off the deck, swinging it towards the massive, stuck hangar doors. They were open just a few meters, enough for a slim ship maybe. "Sir," Fixer said, his voice tight. "The debris, the shields—" "I see it," Zara said, her jaw set. "Hold on." She gunned the engines. The freighter leapt forward like a startled nerf. She aimed for the narrow gap. "Shields to maximum forward." "Shields at 100%, impact in 3, 2. The freighter hit the debris field just before the doors. The deflector shields flared brilliant blue, then white, then failed with a catastrophic shriek of overloading generators. The ship itself plowed through the smaller chunks of metal and conduit, but the sound of shearing alloy was deafening. The port engine nacelle was torn clean off, spinning away towards the surface. Then they hit the doors themselves. The freighter, lighter now without its engine and shields, wedged itself into the gap, buckling the already damaged doors outward with a scream of tortured metal. For a horrible second, they were stuck. Then, with a final grinding shriek, they punched through, tumbling out into the open sky of Sarish, and directly into the path of the separatist blockades covering fire. Laser cannon bolts, red and deadly, lanced out from a nearby Recusant-class destroyer. One caught the freighter's already weakened starboard engine. It detonated in a fireball that shook the ship to its core. Almsought immediately, another bolt sheared through the rear stabilizers. The ship was now a brick. It went into a flat, uncontrollable spin, trailing fire and smoke, hurtling towards the war-torn planet below. "We're going down," Fixer yelled. Zara fought the dead controls uselessly. The ground rushed up to meet them, a rocky, barren plain far from the main battle lines. With a final, bone-jarring crunch, the freighter plowed into the dirt, carving a 100-meter-long trench before coming to a rest, tilted on its side, smoke pouring from its shattered hull. Silence, broken by the creak of cooling metal and the crackle of electrical fires. Zara unbuckled herself, her body one giant ache. Fixer was unconscious, a gash on his forehead. She staggered back to the medbay. Kael was on a cot, groaning, coming around. A clone medic was tending to him. "Report," Zara croaked. "He's got a concussion, some cracked ribs. He'll live. For now. Gather everyone. We're on foot. We head for General Kenobi's last known coordinates." The journey was a trek through hell. The plains of Sarish were a blasted, irradiated wasteland from years of war. They moved by night to avoid separatist patrols and the baking twin suns by day. Their water ran low. Their rations were gone in 2 days. They scavenged what they could from crashed vehicles and the corpses of long-dead soldiers. Kael was silent, brooding, his master's death a shroud around him. Zara took point, her senses stretched to the limit, using the force to feel for patrols, for landmines, for hidden cisterns of non-poisoned water. The clones followed her without question. She was their commander. She was all they had. On the 3rd day, they came across a small, dusty, familiar village nestled in a canyon. Or what was left of it. The huts were burning. The air smelled of smoke and faintly of cooked meat. And in the center of the village square, civilians, men, women, a few children, were kneeling. Hidden behind a large, rocky outcrop, Zara watched, her heart sinking. Then she noticed a figure crouched behind another boulder closer to the village. A human woman in dusty civilian clothes, holding a compact holorecorder. A war journalist. Zara moved like a shadow, coming up behind the woman and clamping a hand over her mouth before she could scream. The woman stiffened, her eyes wide with terror. Separatist? Zara whispered in her ear, her lightsaber hilt pressing into the woman's ribs. The journalist shook her head violently. Republic? Another shake. Neutral? A frantic nod. Zara released her. What's happening here? The woman, a Rinatal, gasped for breath. Separatists. They swept through here at dawn. A general. A mechanical monster. Grievous, Zara spat. Rinna's eyes widened further. You know of him? I thought he was a legend, propaganda. He's real. And he's here? Zara scanned the square. He was. He came with Geonosians. They were carrying these egg-like things. Pods. They cracked them open. Worms came out. They captured Republic clones and a Jedi. A woman. Wore blue armor on her arms, like yours, but with turquoise stripes. Zara's blood turned to ice. Master Vex. The worms, they went into their noses. The clones, the Jedi, they changed. They started rounding up the civilians, taking them to the square. They've been torturing them. For sport. Before Zara could process this, a voice, amplified and horribly familiar, yet twisted with a cruel metallic edge, rang out across the square. Zara, I can sense you, my dear. Come out, or these innocents die one by one. It was Master Vex's voice. But it was wrong. It was saturated with the vile, gloating malice. Zara's breath caught in her throat. She peered over the rock. There in the center of the square stood her master. But her usually kind face was contorted into a sadistic smile. Her eyes, once a calm blue, were now clouded, milky. A faint, sickly yellow film covered them. And twitching at her temple was a pulsing, vein-like bulge. She held her blue lightsaber casually in one hand. 3 clone troopers in 222th armor stood flanking her, their movements jerky, unnatural. Their helmets were off, and their eyes had the same milky, yellow-tinged stare. I know you're there, Padawan, the thing that was Lyra Vex sang. Come out, or I start with the younglings. A Gamorrean child was shoved forward by one of the controlled clones. Stop! Zara's voice tore from her throat unbidden. She stood up, stepping out from behind the rock, her hands raised. Master, what are you doing? Let these people go. Oh, but it's too late for this one, her master said with a theatrical sigh. She grabbed the Gamorrean child, holding her blue lightsaber horizontally behind the youngling's back, the tip positioned right where its heart would be. They're already dead. They just don't know it yet. She ignited the blade. The smell of ozone. The child's eyes wide with confusion. What the hell is going on? Zara screamed, tears of rage and horror welling in her eyes. This isn't you. Oh, but it is, her master purred, deactivating the saber but keeping the child in a headlock. She signaled to the 3 clones beside her. Take her lightsaber. The clones moved forward, their steps stiff. Zara, in shock, didn't resist as they disarmed her, pulling the amethyst hilt from her belt. Her master caught the weapon. Now, Zara, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She tossed a DC-15S blaster rifle at Zara's feet. It clattered on the hard-packed earth. The 3 clones raised their own weapons, aiming directly at her. Here is the deal. You will execute these villagers. Every single one. Or I will carve up these adorable younglings right here, with your lightsaber. She ignited the purple blade, holding it up so it cast a sickly glow on her twisted face. What's it gonna be? Zara stared at the blaster rifle. She looked at the terrified faces of the villagers. Among them, she saw Mira, the young woman her own age. The one who'd shared stories, who'd looked up to her, who wanted to join the Republic because of her. Mira's eyes met hers, full of a desperate, silent plea. Zara started hyperventilating. Wait, just wait. It doesn't have to be this way. Her master sighed, as if dealing with a petulant child. Then her free hand shot out. The force wrapped around a small Ithorian child in the crowd and lifted it into the air, 10 feet off the ground. The child squealed in terror. Shut your mouth, her master shrieked, the voice now entirely alien. She ignited Zara's purple lightsaber and, with a vicious yank of the Force, pulled the struggling youngling onto the waiting blade. The sound was a sizzle pop. The smell was of burnt flesh and ozone. The small body went limp. Zara's scream was silent, a raw tearing in her soul. "No more delays, Zara," her master said calmly, dropping the small smoking corpse. She deactivated the saber. "Don't make me ask again." Behind her rock, Tal, the journalist, watched in abject horror. She raised her holorecorder, its tiny lens capturing everything: the controlled clones, the mad Jedi, the grieving Padawan, the villagers' terror. Numb. Detached. As if watching someone else's life, Zara bent down. Her fingers closed around the cold metal of the DC-15S. The weight was immense. She flicked the selector to full auto. She raised the rifle. She looked at Mira. Mira's eyes widened in disbelief, then in a bottomless, betrayed despair. Zara's finger tightened on the trigger. "Bert!" The blaster rifle roared. Blue bolts tore into the crowd. Bodies jerked and fell. A man clutching his child was cut in half. An old woman vanished in a puff of vapor. Mira took a bolt to the chest, her expression frozen in heartbreak. Zara swept the barrel back and forth, her face a rictus of agony, tears streaming down her cheeks, her jaw clenched so tight she thought her teeth would shatter. It was over in seconds. A field of smoldering, dismembered corpses. Silence, broken only by the hum of the deactivated lightsaber and the controlled clones' heavy breathing. Zara dropped the rifle. It clattered on the ground. She stood there, shaking, empty, her hands still curled into phantom claws around a weapon that had just murdered the people she'd sworn to protect. Tal, from behind her boulder, captured it all. The cold execution. The Padawan's breakdown. She whispered to herself, her voice picked up by the recorder's sensitive mic. "By the stars, she's a monster. A psycho. I'll see her hanged for this. War crimes, I have it all." She didn't see Kael approach from behind. He'd been led there by two of Zara's clones, having regained consciousness just minutes before. He'd seen the tail end of the massacre, seen Zara standing frozen over the bodies. He'd also heard Rinna's whispered vow. His face, already hardened by his master's death, went utterly still. He'd read Master Kenobi's report on the Second Battle of Geonosis. Geonosian brainworms. Parasitic. Mind-controlling. Enter through the nose, travel to the brain, take total control. Even revive the dead. He looked at Zara's master, at the twitching bulge on her temple, at the milky eyes. It wasn't her. It was a puppet. He turned to the two clones with him, his voice low and deadly calm. "On my mark. We take out the infected clones. I'll handle the Jedi." He didn't wait. He acted. A force push, silent and focused, sent two of the controlled clones sprawling. The third turned, its jerky movements too slow. Kael was already moving, his blue blade a flash of light that severed the clone's head from its shoulders. Zara's master, the thing wearing her face, spun, her own blue saber igniting. "You," she hissed. Kael didn't engage in a duel. He used the environment. He kicked a pile of smoldering debris towards her, and as she batted it aside with the force, he charged, not at her, but at the ground near her feet. He slammed his palm into the hard-packed earth, channeling a powerful, localized force tremor. The ground beneath Lyra Vex's feet erupted. She lost her balance, stumbling backwards towards the edge of a steep, rocky ledge that bordered the village square. Zara, still catatonic, held the empty blaster, aiming at the space where the villagers had been. She didn't see Kael's next move. As Lyra Vex fought for balance on the ledge's edge, her movement still slightly uncoordinated from the parasite's control, Kael unleashed a full-power force push. It wasn't a wave. It was a concentrated hammer blow of telekinetic energy, focused squarely on her center of mass. She was lifted off her feet and thrown backwards over the ledge, her scream cut short by distance and the roar of the force. Her lightsaber, tumbling from her grip, clattered onto the ledge. Kael scooped it up before it could roll over and realized it was Zara's saber. He secured it for now. He peered down. The drop was at least 50 meters into a jagged ravine. There was no sign of a body. He turned. Zara hadn't moved. She was still in the same position, the blaster held limply, her whole body trembling. The ghosts of Mira, of the villagers, of the Ithorian child were screaming in her eyes. Kael walked over to her. He gently pried the blaster from her frozen fingers. He took her by the shoulders and turned her away from the carnage. "It's okay," he said, his voice softer than it had been in days. "I know you were forced to do it to spare most of the younglings, and you did. We will keep them safe for now. Your master, she wasn't her. She was infected." Zara blinked, the words slowly filtering through her shock. "Infected?" "Geonosian brainworms. They control the host. It wasn't her. She's still out there. And if we find her, we can fix her." He guided her to sit on a broken piece of wall. "I know. For now, we have to regroup with Kenobi's forces. And when we get back to the temple, there'll be an investigation. A suspension. It's okay. I've got your back. You saved my skin twice now. I owe you. From here on out, I protect you. No one else understands what happened here today. It stays between us." He held out his hand. Zara, finally breaking, looked from his hand to his face, to the village square of the dead. The dam burst. She fell into him, not as a fellow Jedi, but as a shattered person, and wept, great heaving sobs of guilt, grief, and horror. He held her, his own grief for his master a cold stone in his chest, but his resolve solid. She had saved him. He would save her, however he could. Later, as they prepared to move out, Kael found Rinnatal packing away her holo-recorder. She looked at him, her face pale but determined. "I have it all," she said quietly. "The execution. The parasite thing explains the Jedi, but the Padawan, she murdered them in cold blood. I have to report this. It's my duty." Kael looked at her. He thought of Zara's face as she pulled the trigger. The utter devastation. He thought of his master's headless body. He thought of the lightning he'd felt crackle in his veins on the bridge, the dark anger he'd pushed down. He felt a rage, cold and absolute, uncoil in his gut. "I understand," he said, his voice a monotone. He reached out with the force. Not to push or to pull. He reached inside her. He felt the frantic, terrified beat of her heart, the pulsing of the artery in her neck. And with a thought as simple and final as snapping a twig, he squeezed. Rinnatal's eyes bulged. She gasped, a short, choked sound. Her hands flew to her throat. She looked at Kael, confusion turning to terror, then to nothing. She slumped to the ground, dead. Kael stood over her body, his breath coming in short gasps. The dark rush was better than any stim. It was power. It was control. It was justice. He had just killed an unarmed, neutral civilian to protect Zara, to protect their secret, and he felt no remorse. Only a fierce, possessive certainty. "From the moment I saw you step off that gunship," he thought, looking towards where Zara was rallying the remaining clones, "I knew. My future is with you, and I will do anything to keep it." Flashback ends. Present, Nar Shaddaa warehouse. Kael finished his story, his voice a low murmur in the tomb-like quiet of the warehouse. The bodies of their colleagues lay around them, the air thick with the smell of blaster scorches and blood. The air in the ruined outpost was thick with ionized plasma and the coppery stench of fresh blood. Zara sat frozen on the ammo crate, the weight of Kael's confession pressing down on her harder than the bodies of their former ISB colleagues littering the floor around them. A single perfect tear cut a clean line through the grime and spatter on her blue cheek. Kael's voice had been low, almost lost in the hum of distant machinery. "I never told you," he'd said. "About the reporter. She caught you on video. Only the bad side. No context. She called you a psycho. She was going to turn you in. Have you executed for war crimes?" He'd looked away then, his jaw tight. I overheard her talking to herself. I felt that rage again. The same as when Grievous. I just snapped. I stopped her heart with the force. Just squeezed. He finally met her eyes, his own blazing with a feral, possessive honesty that stripped away the last of his Jedi pretense. And I realized I'd do it again. I'd burn 1,000 worlds to ash if they meant to take you from me. I knew at the moment I saw you step off that gunship on the horizon. My future was you. Only you. Zara stared at him. The memory of Sarish, the brain worms, the blaster in her hands, the falling youngling, colliding with this new, devastating truth. He had murdered for her. Not in the heat of battle, but with cold, deliberate intent. A part of her, the last shred of the Jedi Padawan, should have recoiled. Instead, a terrifying warmth flooded the cold void inside her. He was her darkness, and she was his, and together they could keep each other from fully falling into the darkness. They were each other's anchor to the light side. They were the same. Without a word, she leaned forward, her blood-slicked fingers finding his jaw, and pulled him into a kiss. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, a clash of teeth and shared breath, tasting of sweat, blaster residue, and the metallic tang of death. It was an oath. When they parted, breathless, Kael wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her tight against his side. "Nothing touches you," he murmured into her ear. "Nothing, as long as we have each other." The moment shattered with the heavy thump of boot steps and the crackle of Imperial comms. "Delta Team, report. We are on site." They broke apart, their masks of Imperial efficiency slamming back into place in an instant. Zara rose, her spine straightening into the rigid posture of an ISB lieutenant. Kael stood beside her, the picture of a weary but victorious captain. A squad of Imperial stormtroopers fanned into the chamber, their white armor glaring under the emergency lights. Behind them, an Imperial officer in a crisp gray uniform followed, his eyes scanning the carnage with cold appraisal. His insignia marked him as a major from the procurement office. "Captain Kael, Lieutenant Zara," the major said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Your report indicated successful acquisition of the objective and hostile engagement. This appears thorough." Kael stepped forward, his voice adopting the clipped, Coruscanti accent he'd perfected. "The objective was secured, Major. A local syndicate, the Caloran, attempted to ambush us during the handover. They overwhelmed Agent Tarek and his squad here." He gestured to the bodies. "Lieutenant Zara and I were separated, conducting a sweep of the lower levels when the attack began. By the time we fought our way back, our colleagues were already lost. We eliminated the remaining hostiles." The Major's eyes lingered on Zara. Her blue skin was stark against the gray Imperial uniform, now stained with dark blood and soot. "Lieutenant, you seem distressed." Zara didn't blink. She let a sliver of the real, howling grief from Sarish surface. Not for these ISB pawns, but for the villagers, for her master, for her own shattered soul. It made her voice tremble perfectly. "Tarek was my intake partner at the academy, sir. He died covering our retreat to the objective. I watched a Rhodian take his life." A fresh, real tear welled and fell. It was the truest part of her performance. The Major's expression softened a fraction, the human prejudice giving way to perceived feminine weakness, exactly what Zara intended. "A loss for the service," he conceded. "The objective?" Kael produced a small, ornate Durasteel case from his gear and handed it over. The Major opened it, revealing not the Jedi holocron they had come for, but a sophisticated data cube, its surface crawling with fractal Imperial encryption. Kira's people had switched it during the firefight, the real holocron now resting securely in a hidden compartment aboard their new ship. The Major snapped this case shut. "Excellent. Your efficiency, despite casualties, is noted. A shuttle will extract you to the Observer for debrief." Dismissed. As the stormtroopers began tagging bodies, Zara and Kael collected their gear. Under the watchful eye of the Empire, they walked out, 2 more cogs in the machine. 6 months later, ISB headquarters, Coruscant. The transition was seamless. Kira's contacts had been thorough. The files of Jedi Padawan Zara Laline and Jedi apprentice Kael Ren were now ghost stories, buried under layers of falsified service records in the Grand Army of the Republic. In their place stood ISB Lieutenant Zara Elin, a brilliant, if occasionally cold intelligence analyst with an uncanny grasp of military protocol, and ISB Captain Kael Ren, a ruthlessly effective field agent with a talent for aggressive compliance. Their cover was a masterpiece of irony. Zara, with her blue skin and sharp features, was a rarity in the human-centric empire, but her record and demonstrable skill overcame the bias. They whispered about Grand Admiral Thrawn as precedent. Her instructors at the ISB Academy found her a disturbingly quick study. She knew Imperial drill and doctrine instinctively, her mind already wired for war from a different, erased life. Kael's strategic mind and calm, lethal precision saw him fast-tracked into covert operations. By day, they were rising stars. Zara in strategic analysis, her reports on dissident cell patterns so insightful they reached the desk of Colonel Wolf Eulerin himself. Kael in internal affairs, sanitizing problematic imperial officials with a surgeon's precision. They lived in a sterile, state-assigned apartment in the galactic city, their lives a performance of imperial loyalty. By night, they were something else. Their luxury stealth ship, a gift from Kira, was a Spectre-class vessel she'd named the Phantom Det. It was all sleek, angular lines and sensor-absorbent black hull, with crimson engine baffles that left no trace signature. It was currently berthed in a private, shielded dock paid for by Crimson Dawn credits. And there, in its spacious training hold, they shed their imperial gray. Their outfits now were gifts from Kira as well. Military-style fatigues in matte black, trimmed with blood-red piping and subtle gold insignia, the mark of Crimson Dawn's personal enforcers. They moved through brutal nightly sparring sessions, a fusion of ISB close-quarters combat, traditional lightsaber forms, practiced with solid durasteel rods, and the vicious, acrobatic techniques Kira was teaching them. The memory of Merrick's near victory was a brand on their minds. It would not happen again. "Your anger is a weapon, not a master," Kira had said, her voice a whip crack in the quiet hangar. She moved between them, her own electrostaff a blur. "You let it control you against the Inquisitor. It made you sloppy. Channel it. Focus it." Her training was merciless. She taught them to fight dirty, to use the environment, to exploit fear. She spoke of her own master only in vague terms, a formidable, shadowy figure who understood power in all its forms. Her full identity remained a mystery, a loyalty they had yet to earn. The benefits of their double life were immense. Through Zara's analysis desk, Crimson Dawn received early warnings of Imperial crackdowns on smuggling routes. From Kael's purges, they acquired blackmail material on Moffs and corrupt officials, turning them into unwitting assets. They were ghosts within the machine, bleeding its secrets for the Syndicate. To be continued. If you enjoyed the audio story, please like and subscribe to immerse yourself further in Zara and Kael's journey. This release was made sooner than expected due to the interest of 2 more viewers in the audio story. If there are more viewers and newer ones, the story will be released sooner. If the number of viewers remains the same, they will be released at a sluggish pace, and once again, a special thanks to our new viewers tuning in. You are the reason for a speedy release. I appreciate the support and interest in Zara and Kael's journey.